Floyd by a police officer in Minneapolis, which sparked protest across the globe calling for justice and reform, Ribeka Seyoum reports on what has changed since that day in May last year.
I hope that the Prime Minister will join me in standing together not only at grief at the killing of George Floyd, but also determination that we will work together against racism, both in the US and here in the UK.
George Floyd is a name now etched in history and reminds us of a year of racial reckoning. Last year, we at Riverside Reports covered protests across London.
We're just sick of seeing murders on television and on social media.
And Maurice Mcleod, Chief Executive of Race on the Agenda, told us last year that something felt different.
But for some reason, other people seem to be on board. It could be because it happens to have been during this COVID moment. It could be because the murder of George Floyd was particularly gruesome, and anyone that watched that must have been appalled. So maybe it's because of those extremes all coming together. I don't know what it is, but it does feel different.
But how much has changed since then? And does Maurice feel the same way? I spoke to him earlier today.
I do still think that the movement that was sort of global last year has changed things. Of course, there's been pushback from maybe government, and some companies who said they were going to do X have kind of pulled back a little bit. But there has still been, I'm still seeing it. There's still genuine desire within a lot of institutions, whether that's local authorities or universities, various large workplaces. Even on a small level, there are being positive changes. Now, it's not a shock, really, that the government's sort of response to the outcrying for and the demands for racial equality were to go, yes, we're going to have a report. And that report really was about changing how we talk about race, rather than having any actual solutions to the problems that people were saying were there. The report, or the government's aim, was to sort of get us to go, well, actually, is there a problem, though? Maybe we're over-egging it. And which takes us a step further away from the change that people were calling for, that people are still calling for, and people will continue to call for. So I'm not embarrassed that I was excited and hopeful. And I'm still hopeful, and I still genuinely think that what we saw last year, like I said, I'm 52 this year. I've been alive for a long time, and I didn't live through the civil rights movement or whatever, but it felt like that. It felt like the biggest thing. I've seen uprisings in Brixton and Tottenham, and I've seen all sorts of things. But last year felt different, and it's not gone. Footballers are still kneeling now, and I know these things can be criticised as being performative, but I think it's going to be very hard, especially for black communities, to go, okay, you've had your bit of noise now, and just go back to go. You can't push things backwards. I hope so. We'll see.
And you spoke there about taking the knee. That was something that you did do on Wednesday when it marked a year on since George Floyd's murder. And you were in Tooting at the time, but there were quite a few that were happening across London, across the country. So can you tell me a bit about why you decided to go and what the atmosphere was like?
So I thought it was really important to mark the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. Not because, sadly, lots of black people certainly die at the hands of police, and have died at the hands of police over the years. And if we were going to commemorate every single one, we'd never be off of our knees, basically. But it opened so many people's eyes because of just the timing, and the horror of it opened more people's eyes than had normally been opened. And that movement is what I was celebrating. So I'm commemorating the loss of this man's life, but bigger than that, it's what that led to. So what the country needs to, and I think does know, is that we don't get anywhere unless we're honest, and we look at the institutions and be relentless, realize that it's life and death. It's not will it be a bit fairer if we made this? No, we need to change the stuff. Otherwise we're we're going to be having a similar conversation in 20 years' time, and who needs that?
And that was our reporter, Ribeka Seyoum.